I played through Mother 3 recently, and while I was playing, I started to focus on one aspect of the game, one of its themes. It's a theme that usually gets looked over or is lumped in with the greater whole of the story, and while most of the videos talking about Mother 3 are fantastic, they never really take the time to talk about this theme of loss. Super Eye Patch Wolf makes a great video on Mother 3 and how it breaks you. I highly recommend watching it as it's great and also was the main inspiration for this video. But back to my topic at hand, loss in Mother 3. Loss in Mother 3 is handled in two major ways, that being the loss of losing a loved one, death, and how people tend to respond and cope with it, and the other of losing what made something its own being. Now, that last one is hard to explain in a few words, but it will make sense in due time. For now, let's jump into it. First, let me introduce Shigesato Itoi, the creator of Mother 3, as well as a former essayist, copywriter, manga writer, novelist, and even has worked on films. I mention him not only because he's the creator of the Mother series, but his influences and ideologies are integral to Mother 3. When he was barely born, his parents had divorced and he rarely got to see his mother growing up. His father had remarried and was a legal advisor, making it difficult to spend time with one another. Because of this, he spent his childhood being raised by his grandmother. When he was 10 years old, he had accidentally walked into a different theater, one that was screening a movie titled Kenpei Duwarawara Shibinjin, The Military Policeman and the Dismembered Beauty. When he walked in, he saw a scene in which a man and a woman are about to engage in some coitus, until the man strangles the woman. Needless to say, Itoi went back home with the scene in mind, a bit frazzled. Later on in life, Itoi had noticed how life in society is often covered up with happier tones, tending to stray away from darker subject areas. Now, the movie I mentioned only really applies to Earthbound 1 and 2, and by that I mean the final boss, Gigas, but his thoughts about society are important to Mother 3. Which brings us to actually talk about Mother 3 follows the story of Lucas, Duster, Kubatora, and Boney, Lucas's dog. The world in which we're thrown into, known as the Nowhere Islands, is actually an all-powerful dragon that has been put into a deep slumber long ago. However, a little fella known as Porky wants to awaken this dragon to destroy the world because he wants to. However, our heroes stop him by pulling more needles and putting their pure heart into the dragon, causing him to keep everyone alive. Or at least that's how it ends happily. More on that later. Let's start talking about loss, because, oh boy, there sure is a lot, but it's not subtle either, because why would it need to be? We need to start off the game by introducing the village of Tasmilli and its residents and how quite small it is and how everyone knows one another. We then follow Flint and Hanawa, parents of twins Klaus and Lucas. Klaus is the older twin and is typically more courageous than Lucas, who tends to be shy and apprehensive. He now and the boys are visiting their grandfather, who lives past the woods. When we play as Lucas, it's the last day visiting the grandfather, and they start making their way back home. However, a fire happens at night in the woods. Everyone in the village is rushing to put it out. Luckily though, it starts to rain, helping to put a stop to the fire. But there's something unsettling about the situation. We see the forest gets bombed, causing the fire. Flint fights a cyborg caribou, and there's strange men wearing pig masks. And not only that, but there's a piece of cloth that is similar to Hanawa's dress. The boys are found by the townspeople, and Flint acquires a new weapon, a Drago Fang. It's where it was found, though, that really causes a catalyst for the rest of the game and how it's played out. Hanawa is dead. That Drago Fang was found in her body. She had sacrificed herself to protect her children. But you see, Dragos are harmless to people, and as we saw earlier while playing as Lucas, they cause no real harm. Something caused a change in their behavior, and is clearly shown as to what could be the cause of that. When her death happens, the people of Tasmilli are quite somber. However, those close to her, her family, react differently. Flint's instant reaction is to lash out in anger, and is even the first person to be put in jail due to him lashing out violently. Klaus, the following day, goes out to go and kill the Drago that had killed his mother. In the process, he ends up dying as well. Or, well, it's implied as we see his seemingly lifeless body. Flint breaks out of jail and finds the Drago, a now mechanized beast, being ordered to attack and kill. The Drago's killed, but Flint, finding his son's shoe, believes his son is out there, and spends the next 3 years looking for him. Mother 3 tackles loss by showing how long it could stay with someone, and how that can change a person. Flint and Klaus's reaction to death is quite destructive. Flynn lashes out violently and only wants to kill the thing that took his wife away from him. Klaus, in turn, is the same. They're both representative of how loss is altering one's personality and being, causing them to lose themselves in the process of trying to cope. I haven't talked about Lucas in all of this, the main character of the whole game. Lucas represents the solace and isolated part of grieving, both physically and metaphorically. Due to Klaus's disappearance, his father is rarely at home and his brother is gone. He has no one to depend on, and he still clings on to the memories of his mother and brother 3 years later. When it comes to death in Mother 3, there aren't that many characters that die, but those that do make their impact to the story integral to the game. Now, the people of Tazmily, from what we were told and shown at the beginning, are a calm group of people, tight-knit, and tend to help one another. Actually, they're so friendly towards one another and so tight-knit that they don't have a concept of money. They don't have their own monetary system. They're people who are content with their lives just how they are, and they don't see the need to change. That is, until Fassad shows up. Now, let's take a quick detour of my explanation on loss, because I have to explain some characters that become important in the final half of the game. We introduce the Mad Gypsies, a race of magical beings who are descendants of the ones who sealed the dragon. They exist only to protect the needles and have been around for thousands of years. There's 7 of them. And as a cool little fun fact, they're all named after the different modes of music. Now, why do I mention the Mad Gypsies? Well, it comes as a shock near the end of the game when you fight Fassad, who, after your first fight with him, is transformed into a cyborg who speaks through horns, like trumpets, trombone type of horns. And as he speaks with you, you can hear the song The Gypsies Party playing through him. Essentially, Fassad. He had betrayed the Gypsies and had joined forces with Porky in order to help him achieve his goal. But what does Fassad have to do with the people of Tazmily? Well, when he shows up with Salsa, a monkey who had been taken away from his girlfriend Samba and is being used to help convince the people of Tazmily to buy happy boxes, which are just essentially TVs. When Fassad is presenting the idea of the happy boxes, he asks the townsfolk which of them are truly content. Many leave and disregard his message, but the ones that stay end up taking the happy boxes and also end up being the first ones to lose their lifestyle. Eventually, everyone gets a happy box, except for the older people and Lucas. This is because of a huge thunder tower that had been built in order to destroy the houses of those who don't own a happy box. By this point in the game, 3 years had passed since Sinal's death. Fassad had shown up and had started planting the seeds of deception of what life can be and what it should be for the people of Tazmily. The once quiet town of Tazmily had been turned into a town with cars, trains, and different people. They now use money, and the once cozy Yado Inn is now a Yado Hotel. The mayor who once loved his job is now sick of it and wants to move to Newport City, just like everyone else. The people of Tazmily lose themselves to what essentially Itoi's critique on capitalism. Now, I won't delve deep into that, but the way the people of Tazmily lose themselves should not be a shock. You see, the people of Tazmily were never calm or had never lived the way they ever did. The same part when Fassad is revealed to be a Gypsy, you meet Leader, who was the tallest man in the game and was the people's bell ringer. But due to Porky's influence, he had been locked in the sewers waiting for Lucas. He explains to Lucas how the people of Tazmily come from a different world, one where their world had been destroyed due to the actions of their own people. And when they arrived to the Nowhere Islands, they erased their memories and had taken up roles which allowed them to live peacefully without worrying about destroying the world. Leader was the only one who was left to remember, and he was chosen solely due to how out of place he looks, and how that would remind people of their roles. The castle that is there existed long before the people of Tazmily, and the people wanted to make a whole comprehensive history of everything, but ended up not doing so. So really, the people of Tazmily being persuaded to live under Porky and to listen to him was bound to happen. They had lost a whole world and they didn't want to do it again. But in order to accomplish that, they had to forget who they were, what they did, and why. Mother 3 provides many more examples of loss, such as the chimeras, animals being created with other animals, and the pigmasks and the residents of Newport City being taken away from their worlds into Porky's twisted funland and also forgetting who they are and being brainwashed. Even Porky, the final boss, is an example of loss, except he doesn't really like to lose. Porky time traveled and traveled to different worlds, causing him to age rapidly, but he still likes to act like a kid. He taunts Lucas, and before you can reach the 100th floor, he makes you go through multiple rooms and floors, constantly making fun of you. But you see, Porky's lonely. He had lost his reasoning for what he does long ago. He has a restaurant of robots who look exactly like his mother, and he wants to destroy the world solely because he can. Porky is lost himself, and his fate, unable to die and locked inside the absolutely safe capsule, ends up as him, essentially, forever lost. I want to talk about the ending now. Once Lucas and company confront Porky, Porky allows them to go down and see the final kneel just as another way to taunt Lucas. Flint shows up and he goes on ahead, and Lucas and gang follow behind. But along the way it's desolate, empty even. While down there you find a doorknob which, if you were paying attention to the beginning of the game, belonged to Lucas's house, which had been pulled out due to Thomas's freak out about the fire. Lucas ends up dropping it, ironically losing it. Eventually you fight Porky, and essentially winning since he was put into the absolutely safe capsule. When you make your way to the final needle, Flint's hat flies in the wind. You see him, on his knees. He finally found Klaus, the son who he had lost 3 years ago. Throughout most of the game, Klaus is no real big shock to be the masked man. But after his fight with the Drago, he had been brainwashed and turned into a killing machine, and the only one strong enough to pull the needles, aside from Lucas. Throughout the encounters Klaus has with Lucas, there's always a bit of hesitancy with Klaus, as if he remembers something. But now we're here. Now it doesn't matter. This is the final needle to destroy the world, and Klaus will kill anyone to achieve the goal. Because he isn't the same boy anymore. He's lost, following the orders of someone who has no interest in life and finds joy in pure suffering. Klaus knocks out everyone except Lucas, due to Lucas holding the Franklin badge. And when the fight starts, Lucas can't bring himself to attack. Klaus throws attack after attack, but throughout the fight, a voice cuts in. One that slowly brings Klaus back to who he was. An omelet. Klaus's attack becomes weaker, and when he's about to use PK Love, the same PK ability Lucas has, Flint runs in and takes the damage. Because of that, it brings Klaus back to his senses somewhat. At this point, Lucas can attack, but Lucas is emotionally defeated. He doesn't want to kill his brother, the one thought to have been gone for so long. He doesn't want to lose him when he just got him back. Klaus eventually regains his memory. He takes off his mask, and Lucas remembers the way he smelled. Klaus casts one last PK Thunder. He thinks of all the atrocities he's committed, and he can't deal with it anymore. Lucas holds his brother in his last moments. As Klaus says to him, "It's okay now. I'm going where Mom is now." Lucas watches his brother die. Absolutely distraught and destroyed, he goes to pull the final needle. The MacGuffin the game has been working toward. When Lucas pulls it, the world starts shaking. Animals and people are panicking, running around. The world is thrown into utter chaos. And I believe Shigesato Itoi wanted this to be the true ending. One where Lucas, in all of his struggle and emotional turmoil, ends the world. Not out of malicious intent, out of want. Out of want to be with his mother and brother yet again. But it doesn't end like that. It ends with a black screen in which you talk to the characters. They say everything is fine and that they're alright. They even say thank you to the player for playing and for saving the world. But if we were just to take the ending for what it seems to be as the finale, Lucas lost. Everyone lost. Lucas being destroyed by grief and death wants it all to end. He doesn't want to feel lost anymore. He just wants to go somewhere he knows he'll be. Somewhere he knows it will be alright. A world where everything is just how it should have been. Mother 3 has dark tones. Itoi had wanted it to be that way, obviously. He wanted to go out with a bang, and I believe the ending, pun aside, was his goal. Said the heroes ultimately destroy the world. They were all lost, really. Lucas with no family, Duster, whose father had abandoned him emotionally, and Kotora, who has no real family either. Now, this isn't really a found family, these are just people who wound up together because they were lost. Now, that may just fit in the definition of found family, but, you know. The people of Tazmily had lost their world, but they ended up sticking together and creating a new society, one without conflict or fear of destruction, and they were happy and content. And maybe that's what Itoi wanted to convey. He He wanted to tell a story about people who lost so much and lost their own personality and originality, only for them to come together and become stronger, to help one another move forward and to take on challenges that are insurmountable alone.